Welcome to Top Class with me, Duncan Crawford, where we're discussing why STEM subjects are so male-dominated. Why is there a persistent gender gap in the fields of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM for short? Women currently make up around a third of STEM graduates, or even as little as 20% in some OECD countries. And some policymakers, at least, see this gender disparity as alarming. STEM careers are often referred to as the jobs of the future, and pursuing a career in STEM often leads to better paying jobs too. So what can be done to get more women to take up STEM subjects? And should that be a priority? Well, I'm glad to say I'm joined by two women who are experts in this field to give us their insights. Beatrice Boots, director of the non-profit Dutch STEM platform, PTvT, and who also chairs the EU STEM Coalition, the EU's main network of national STEM platforms. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And Priscilla Gatonye, a programme officer for inclusion in youth at UNESCO's International Centre for Technical and Vocational Education and Training. Hello to you, Priscilla.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. Beatrice Boots, if I can start with you, should we be concerned about the relatively small numbers of women studying science, technology, engineering and maths compared to men? And if yes, why?
Yes, I think this is a very important issue because we do want a lot of people in STEM because they're so important for our economy. We just had a report from Mr. Draghi in Europe who said the future of Europe depends on competitiveness, and the unavailability of human capital in STEM is one of the issues. And if half of our women are not choosing STEM, we will never meet up the numbers that we need to be more competitive. So it's a pity that unless a lot of efforts, we are still lagging behind on this issue.
Priscilla, if I can come to you, why, in your view, are women less likely to pursue careers in STEM?
Well, thank you so much, Duncan. I think if you look at the evolving landscape of work, we need more women participate equally into the production of activities in the economy. But we see that there's so many challenges that women face, and we look at it from the educational perspective. We look at the learner's journey all the way to the time they transition into the world of work. They have a lot of barriers that they get. So the barriers to access, the barriers to completion, and the barriers to transition into the world of work. These are things like personal issues, like individual learner can have issues when it comes to their understanding and their perspective of what STEM is. Do they have motivation and interest in this subject? It could be influenced by the parents and the peers who have biases as well, who might advise us or misadvise these young students to pursue STEM. And it could be barriers that are structural in nature. So there are various ways of looking at it. Even the society itself, the society can be very stereotypical and have a lot of biases that affect whether a person really chooses to pursue a STEM career or not.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting how you outline all those obstacles, and I want to break down and get into those later on. One of the things which I found interesting researching this podcast is that there is essentially, though, no longer a huge difference between 15-year-old girls and boys when it comes to their maths and scientific knowledge in many countries. The latest global PISA test, the test which assess 15-year-olds globally, found that boys outperform girls in maths in around half of the countries it surveyed, 81 countries and economies. But in 17 countries and economies, girls came out on top. So if girls are getting relatively the same scores as boys in these subjects, or doing better in some occasions, what's happening in that period after the age of 15, which is driving them away from pursuing STEM subjects at university, for example? Beatrice Boots, what do you think?
Yes, I think this has a lot to do with the self-confidence of girls and women. As you say, they have the same results now in math. In the past, we thought maybe this was an issue. They're not that good in math, so that's why they don't continue. But at some point, they are. If you tell a boy who has a 6, oh, you can continue to engineering, he will do it. If a girl has a 6 and you tell her, well, maybe you're not good enough, she definitely will not choose it. So there is a difference in the self-confidence of girls and women. And that's actually something you can work at. I think also teachers, the example I just gave, are sometimes unintentional biased. I don't think they really don't want girls to choose it, but by saying it this way, girls start to doubt it and they will not choose it. And I don't think they have that in the back of their minds. So that also requires teachers to be more aware of this. There are actually studies that teachers say, no, I don't do that, and I treat them the same. But if you, there are studies where this has been looked at very with comparing groups, etc., and then it shows that teachers are doing this. So I think this is one of the reasons they are not choosing it. But also in the end, the girls that do choose STEM studies, when they look for a job, they want to go into the workforce in the industry. The industry is male dominated. There's nothing we can do about that right now. But then you come there as the only woman. And then it's like, do I want to be here the next 5 or 10 years? So it's also, it's in every phase of your step from a study to a career that you face these obstacles. Why? And that's why they drop out. It's like a hurdles race. And each time you catch a hurdle, oh God, you drop out.
Priscilla, do you agree with that? Is that something which you see commonly happening to the people you speak to?
Yeah, absolutely. So we look at it in two ways. So in terms of biology, there's no difference, as you said, on the performance. So either girl or boy can perform equally in mathematics, science, and engineering. But when it comes to the psychological part of it, this is where we see the differences. And we're looking at it from the time we have young children all the way to puberty. This is where we structure and really form ideas about what gendered roles look like. So, for example, you'll find that if you have a young boy who is growing up in a family of boys and girls, how we treat them in the household is very different. So the confidence level, as what Beatrice is talking about, it starts way early. We start by really showing that boys can tackle these difficult issues. We give them presents for Christmas in terms of PS games, technical level kind of presents. And for girls, we always give them something very princess-like, a doll, etc. So we are really forming these ideologies from the word go. And by the time they come to puberty, where they're supposed to now take up STEM courses, they don't have that confidence because over the time they have created these gendered ideologies and identities where they already feel that this activity or this subject is for boys and it's not going to fit me well. And then this is also compounded with issues with role models. When you don't have role models that you grow up looking up to in STEM careers, so there's no conviction for you to pursue this career. So in the end, the confidence levels go down and self-efficacy as well goes down, and girls tend to always go back to something that is familiar with what they have grown.
So to play devil's advocate and push back on that idea a little bit, if a girl at that age, at 5 years old, likes to play with Barbies or to get princesses in pink dresses, are you saying that effectively having a Barbie is bad? And then are you going on to say that those early experiences, even if the girl does very well in science and maths at the age of 15, that those early experiences are what's determining her choices later in life?
Absolutely. And this is what we say, that any inequality that you see in the workplace did not start there. It started somewhere, and it started in school. It started at household level. So if you see challenges in terms of convincing girls, it's harder. But you see there's households where they have families of doctors, families of their mothers, and they have female role models who also try to demystify and really dismantle these barriers that we see from household levels. And it's easier for these girls to pursue such STEM courses. For example, if you see in patriarchal families where maybe a father is an engineer, the girls tend to become engineers as well because the father who is already trying to create these pathways for them. And this is not the case for many households.
Yeah, maybe to add to this, of course, you can give a pink Barbie doll to a girl. In general, there's nothing wrong with it. But we already know that at a young age, you get all these little things around you. And then in the end, if you ask children at primary schools to draw an astronaut, they draw a man. If you ask them to draw a doctor, they draw a man. If you ask them to draw a fire person, they draw a man. So already at that age, you see all the girls, all the boys, they all draw men. And then at some schools, you can see that in those films, then they ask the people to come in the class in real life, and then they're all females, of course. And then all the children, also the boys, are like, huh? They're all female. So it's already very at a young age that it's a sort of imprint in your brain that all these jobs in the future you might desire are men. And so I think we have to start young by showing girls that this is also an option for them, besides giving them the Barbie.
What you're describing, though, is on such a huge scale, far wider than just education specifically. So what can policymakers do practically to create changes which influence this wide variety of things, whether it's toys, media, representation, even parental expectations about their children, and how that reinforces, traditional gender roles?
First of all, you can do something at education, but companies should also be aware of doing things. And if I look first at the labor market, at industry, they should also try to be an attractive employer and make sure that people do want to work for them. But then, of course, you already need women who did study engineering or another STEM subject. And make sure that you also realize that differentiate yourself from the competition is also something that you can achieve maybe by hiring more women. But in order for them to get there, one of the things we just mentioned is early exposure to education by creating also engaging and hands-on STEM curricula that focus also on this diversity issue. Mentorship and role models is something we know from research is really working. So we need more role models. The supportive environments that can be at home, that can be in the school, the teacher, that can also be the industry who has to be more involved also with these educational subjects. So work on industry partnerships between schools and company is something that can add to it. Well, these are a few things, but so there are many things you can work at, and you probably have to work on them more or less all on the same time. And you also have to work on it systematically and for long term.
What about the issue of what you were talking about earlier about the impact of media and presents, toys, parental treatment of children in their early years?
I think it's just having a balanced outlook and a balanced view. So what we provide from childhood level should be a balanced representation of what is happening in the labor market. So, for example, if we're talking about the careers that are related to STEM, it's not just about medicine and IT and others. We have to look at the various career paths that exist. So we need to see more girls who are role models in plumbing, more girls who are role models as technology farmers, and any other career that captures that. So it's not just about providing these mimicking aspects, but it's about creating a wide variety of role modeling and even imaging, because we know what imaging does to a girl is very important.
From an early age, when kids are going through the school system, is it typical for teachers to not treat boys and girls in the same way, where consciously or subconsciously there are some biases which influence their interactions with the students, which leads them to pushing them into different areas of subjects?
Yes, and this is one of the challenges that we see, especially in the institutional level, where teachers as human beings have also gone through the system, and they are also biased, and they carry their own gender norms and understanding of what career is supposedly belong to this particular kind of sex. But in the end, we see that these biases and stereotypes are brought into class where they mislead and they provide guidance that is in biased way. So this is, for example, you would say a teacher would, if they ask a question, for example, in a classroom, and the girl gets it wrong, instead of asking the same girl to another girl to respond to it, they will probably just go to a boy, because there's understanding that the boy will always get it right. So there's a lot of nuances when you look at the biases and stereotypes that people bring. Some of them are unconscious because they have no knowledge of it. But mostly it's because they have also gone through these systems. They have gone through these stereotypes and biases from their household level. So they bring this to class. So when a girl wants to pursue something that is very technical, the teacher will be the first person to say, which other girls have you seen doing this? You know, so the teacher already shows you that this is not a place you should be thinking about, and they'll redirect you into literature. More girls are doing literature. Have you considered hospitality? And it's not just teachers alone. It's even the career guidance experts that we see, the liaison officers in schools. Their lack of understanding of the wider aspect of gender equality and prospects within the STEM careers really leads to this misled information.
So Beatrice Boots, if I could bring you back in, what should policymakers do about this? Because what Priscilla's talking about there are these deep-rooted biases which are a part of society and a part of, they're ingrained in people. So how do you change teachers to lose those biases?
Well, maybe I can give an example of how we are doing this in the Netherlands. We have all this knowledge that we know that girls choose less for STEM than boys. And for instance, we really try to focus on individual schools and individual teachers to become more aware of this and that they are able to change this. And for instance, in the Netherlands, our vocational education is very traditional. So if you study STEM at a vocational school, it's about cars, it's about carpentry. And we know that if you combine technology, for instance, with the art subjects or with more sustainable issues that women find very interesting, they are a lot more willing to choose those subjects because they can see themselves working at sustainability at some point for some organization. And schools are relatively slow in changing the curricula. First of all, they're not aware. Secondly, they don't find it that important because what they do is good. But we try to have discussions with them that if we do want women to choose it, we have to change the curricula. And then we look in the Netherlands for good examples at some schools where there are a lot more women in STEM than other schools. We do have them in the Netherlands. We found them and we ask them, what have you done to change this and why are you successful? And those examples we share with the other schools.
What are those schools doing differently to others?
Well, one of the schools, we noticed that a lot of girls are choosing physics. It's a secondary school in this case. So we asked a teacher and we found out that this teacher, he made his own physics curriculum. And this was much more about not just learning the formula and practice the formula all the time, but explaining the formula in a way that students had to explain it to each other. So they were discussing it in little groups. And in this way, the girls got much more the idea that they understood it and that they were able to do it. So the self-confidence there was a lot higher. And in those schools, in each year, almost 80 to 90% of the girls did choose physics. So then we asked his school, can we borrow your teacher and visit other schools? So he explains how he changed his curriculum. And then they say, oh, if he can do it, maybe we can do it as well.
Priscilla, if I can bring you back in, and just to come back to the subject of human biases for a second, if you're speaking to teachers and saying you hold these conscious or unconscious biases and telling them they need to change, what's the reaction from teachers when you speak to them? Are they defensive or do they accept what you're telling them?
I think it depends on where these teachers are located. So just to give a little bit of background, UNESCO Univoc works at a global platform and we work with teachers from all corners of the world. And this is specifically on PTvT. So depending on how the cultural norms are actually strong in a particular context, we get different reactions. So most of the teachers are actually shocked by the realization that what they've been actually perpetrating is not really promoting equality, and they really want to learn. And this is why we provide this gender responsive pedagogy training, which we provide very tangible aspects or activities that a teacher can do in terms of understanding whether the training materials are actually propelling any of these stereotypes. We look at the classroom arrangements. We look at things like the language that is used. Is it inclusive language? Does it really empower girls? And we look at such aspects. So understanding that the issue, where the issue is, really allows them to really go back and reflect and try to make changes. Some of them, of course, come from very strong, very patriarchal kind of systems where they still want to argue out and say, but what about this? What about that? So we always try to respect every culture, and we say, go back and really try to criticize it. And one of the examples that we use to try to bring this message home is to try to make it personal. And you ask a teacher, if this was your daughter or this is your son that is going through this, would you still want to perpetrate the same kind of issues? And they will go back and come back later and say, okay, let's continue this. I now agree. I really need to see this change. You have to show what is at stake for them to start really waking up and thinking, I need to change my ways. I need to be more positive and I need to be more inclusive in my teaching.
Okay, thanks for that. I want to talk about STEM working environments for when women are a little older, they're going into those workplaces. How big an issue is that if it's a male-dominated profession largely, and where women might find it intimidating for a wide variety of reasons? And what can be done to change that, given that they are these male-dominated environments?
First of all, the awareness is very important. If you don't see this issue, you will never going to solve it. And with coming back to the schools in Holland, if you tell schools you have to work on this because companies need more women or STEM people in general, they're like, well, that's not our issue. If you say, yeah, but the Dutch government wants this or the European government wants this, they also say, oh, this is not an issue for us. If you tell them, yeah, but you don't challenge the talent of women, then they see it's an issue for them. Well, this is the same for the workforce. I don't think they see this enough yet, but with the tightness of the labor market, by becoming a more desirable employer, they are more willing than ever before to do something about it. And even setting a number in the future, by some Dutch industry are doing that now. They say in 2030, we want 30% of our workforce to be women. And then they realize if we want to achieve that goal, we really have to go back and do things differently and do it now and also do it together with education. Otherwise, we're never going to obtain that goal.
Is there a lack of leadership then at the moment on this, particularly from male leaders to change the situation?
I think you hit the bottom here. This is very important. This is really about leadership. And I think if leaders in the industry are much braver to really do something, but also show this, that could be very important. Also, in order to look at the needs of customers and clients, I think the companies are becoming more aware that also the women are now customers and clients. In the past, you would sell a car maybe to a man, but nowadays you also sell a car to a woman. And I think they are becoming more realistic, but many steps can still be taken. So leadership, yeah, very good point.
I've interviewed people in the past who've told me that higher education and professional environments in STEM can be unwelcoming to women for a whole range of reasons, from being macho environments to going as far as sexist abuse and other issues. So if male-dominated workplaces and study places are sometimes like that, what should policy be doing to try and change things?
I think that the topic of workplace is usually a very big topic, and there's so many barriers that we see. So we look at it from different perspectives. So how many young people or how many graduates are joining the STEM careers? So there's a leaky pipe on this where we talk about from enrollment into higher education all the way to joining work. We keep losing girls along the way, and this is STEM related. So we see less women are joining the STEM careers. That we see even less women actually stay on into these STEM careers. They drop out in the end. And at the same time, there's so many barriers when it comes to leadership positions, as Beatrice has said, and transition into leadership positions and where they can actually make changes. So environment, as you say, is an important aspect. It starts with we have employers' biases about what a girl can do vis-a-vis what a man can do. Then there's another issue that has come prominently lately is about this perception that the performance is not going to be at equal par as the male colleagues. And this is the thinking and the environment that allows girls not to perform well. So, for example, in terms of the performance, every person requires to have a mentor, to have some sort of leadership, some sort of career guidance, even when they are working, for them to be able to perform optimally. So we see that since there are less women in these workplaces, there's less women who are providing this mentorship. And of course, girls who come into these very high technical STEM careers, they end up dropping out in the end because they lacked that mentorship aspect. There's no opportunity for transitioning into leadership. And of course, there's the issue of the choice that they have to make. Do I continue working or do I become a caregiver for my parents or the children that they have?
What are the economic implications of that, of women being underrepresented in STEM?
If you look at the salaries in STEM jobs, they're usually relatively high. So also for women to become more independent economically, it's interesting if they choose more STEM studies and also jobs, because they can be more economically independent. And now often they choose for studies where salaries are not so high in the workforce and where there is a lot of part-time jobs, so you even earn less. So I think also showing women that this is a way to become economically independent, it could also be something we could point out more. If you don't go into this industry, you have less opportunities. And in some cases, women also choose studies more in the administrative jobs that are going to disappear because of AI and other technological developments. So we should also point out that in STEM, there is a future there, because it will be a constantly developing area where there are a lot of jobs. I'm not saying you never have to learn again. You have to do that as well. But in the end, you have a lot of opportunities there. And in some areas, you will not have the option anymore.
Priscilla, are students, girls in particular, aware of that when you speak to them, that the future of jobs is changing, that STEM fields, there are lots of opportunities with developing technologies, environmental, climate, AI and things like that? Or is it something they're not aware of and people don't talk to them about it?
So, unfortunately, this is still a challenge that we are experiencing because there's not clear guidance in terms of information that relates to where the future of work is headed. So there's still speculation. There's ideas of IT. Yes, the fourth industrial revolution is here, but it's not as urgent as people think. So, for example, we had LinkedIn just produced this report, the Global Green Gender Careers, and they showed that it's only 1 woman in 10 that actually has a green skill. And we're talking about the future of work is going to be very digital, which includes green technologies. And it's only 1 person in 10 who have these green skills. So when we go back to young people and we ask them, do they understand what a green skill is, what the future looks like? Do they have these skills for digitalization and ICT? We still see very many don't understand and they don't know. So they say they have the willingness to learn, but they are not really well equipped to understand what they need to do to prepare for the future of work.
I want to try to pin down from both of you, if there's one thing you think policymakers should do to change the situation, to improve it in your view, what should that be, Beatrice Boots?
Yes, well, I think we've shown, Priscilla and I, that there is a lot of information and knowledge about this issue. We know why women do not choose it. We know why they drop out or don't choose for the jobs in the industry. So I really would like to ask the policymakers to focus on implementation and use the knowledge that is already there. And I would ask for them to have a systematic national and or international approach, a long-term approach that gives this issue time, because you do not do this overnight. We know that, otherwise we would have fixed this problem. So work and support gender-sensitive and gender-neutral approaches, and do this for a long term. Do this with the triple helix partners, and then I mean industry, education, and government. And make sure this is a sustainable approach.
And Priscilla?
I think for policymakers, and I'm just going to say this because we have reports that for the last 10 years, all the effort that we've been doing in terms of improving gender equality and STEM performance has not changed. We still have 35% of women in STEM over the last 10 years. So certainly something needs to be done. And what I would propose or recommend maybe to policymakers is to look at this in a more holistic way, as just what Beatrice has said. Look at who are the partners that we need to now really partner with, and how every institution and every actor in the system really contributes to this. So one important aspect to look at is we cannot achieve any aspect of SDGs if we don't have gender equality. And there's a recent report, a gender index, that shows that we are still very far from achieving this. And actually, they say that if a child is born today, they will need to celebrate their 97th birthday for them to actually see some level of gender equality. So this is really disheartening, and policymakers should take this to heart, understand what are the key barriers, who are the players in this system, have a whole system approach to tackling these biases and, of course, the barriers that girls are facing in STEM, and, of course, bring the men into this conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. It's clear that there are a huge number of things which need to happen if the gender gap in STEM subjects is going to be addressed. Policymakers, you've just been given a full intro of things to implement and get sorted. So please do get to work. Thank you to both of you for speaking to me, to my two guests, Beatrice Boots from the Dutch STEM platform PTvT and Priscilla Gatonye from UNESCO. That's it for now. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. Follow us on whatever platform you use and give us a like or a repost on social media. Help us spread the word about the policy discussions we're having on Top Class. Thanks to everyone for listening, and I hope you do tune in again soon. All the best.